don't know what's going on with my hair. Hello, everybody. I just be always having the weirdest
Good
hair
evening.
things.
Good evening. Good evening.
I always be having the.
Either.
I just like I think my hair looks great at the moment, and then I come on and I'm just like I hate my hair and everything about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Female things. You're
Yeah.
you're not even
Yeah.
yalla 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 yalla. Hi me. It's one of those things. I'm just gonna try and fix it. I don't know. I don't even think it really matters. Hair is a big thing. Hello, Duke Nation. How are you? Long time don't see, brethren.
What's going on?
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about no.
That's what we're doing?
We're gonna talk about sex.
Okay.
You know what we talk about. Why do you always act like you are just so like, okay?
Okay.
We are talking about the sexing up in the relationship, giving people some insight into our life and our situation. I don't know how much you want to share, but you know I like to share. I don't know what means.
I don't know how much I didn't know I was the prohibitive factor.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're the more. I know we're reserved. I would think of the two.
Probably. Maybe. In here, we're gonna wait for some people to come on and stop in and visit a bit, and then we'll get started on with our Thursday night evening fuck your feelings conversation.
Therapy, as you like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, yesterday we had another show, and I thought we needed some couples therapy because this man went on and on about how I don't turn the air conditioning on in the house and how I'm making it hot, and that's why he's tired. It was the whole thing. I was like, do we need couples counseling?
Well, you are sensitive a bit sometimes. You give it, you dish it, but you don't take it too good.
I am sensitive.
And yeah, it was just, I thought we were on a good page, and then it was just so hot. But I might have overreacted.
Yeah, just a little bit. Un poquito. A little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so as many languages I can say.
It could happen.
Okay. Like, you were definitely overreacting. I get, and that's a different thing when you're in a relationship and you're really trying to compromise. Because I don't mind heat. I lived in cold for so long. I don't mind heat. Now I don't want sweltering heat, and I will go with you. I keep it in Celsius, and it's like 45 degrees Celsius. For those of you who are used to Celsius and not Fahrenheit, like most of the rest of the world, 45 degrees Celsius is quite hot. So I completely get when Rob has come home and I have turned the air conditioning off because I don't like forced air. So I get it. But he acts like it's the end of the world. But he's also the same man who will leave the house in 45 degrees Celsius weather in track pants that he's pulled up. So I'm like, how are you complaining about the internal temperature, which is not that hot, when you go outside in track pants and you will put on a sweater? So it does not compute.
There's no relief.
But it doesn't make. Here's the problem with me: when something does not compute, I'm just like, you don't like hot temperature, but you go outside in the middle of summer with track pants on that you roll up thinking that makes a difference.
You're hilarious right now. I just like you. I don't like how you said, when your mind gets locked onto a certain thing, it's like, oh, okay.
It doesn't make no sense.
To you, and yes, for all the reasons that she just underlined, she is locked in. Like, this should not bother me, but other than the fact that you don't seem to get that there should be a difference coming in the house.
I get that.
Outside.
I get that. I go to the gym in the mornings. I come back. I am sweating. I work out quite a bit. I do a very intense, about an hour and a half workout, and 30 minutes of those is intense running. I'm running miles, and I get that. And I'm lifting weights, and then all these different things. So I completely get it. When I come home, but still, it's not the.
So.
I'm just saying. Anyhow, but that's why we sex our relationship back to health.
I guess. I guess. But she can turn off the AC, and I've not been too happy about it. It's been a little obsessive. It's been like a contest, but it's because it's summertime in Arizona. It will. If you've never been through one, you just know, like, yeah, you can't play with that AC. Or in Florida, as they call it, the dew. Can't play with the dew.
What is the what?
The dew. That's what they call
Like
it.
DEW? Or like do?
Yeah, they'll be like, woman, what's up with your dew? Like, why you ain't got the AC on?
Y'all are different people, boy. Like,
I
just, I don't get it. Anyhow,
Anyhow,
sex your relationship back to health. Sex. Is it a relationship saver? What say ye, Rob?
it could be I don't know if necessarily a relationship saver. Definitely could be a relationship breaker. And it probably should be one of the things that's better in a healthier relationship as opposed to bad. I can't see a lot of great relationships where the two people are not pleased with their sex life. Like that would seem like that would be a pretty big issue. But I think there's been a lot of relationships that were built just on sex, and sex alone ain't enough to keep nothing going either, because you spend a whole lot more time not having sex than you do having sex, no matter who you are.
So, just so I can clarify, you're saying you don't think that someone can have a great relationship if their sex life isn't good?
I would say at least medium. I would think it would needs to be medium.
Hmm.
Because I just how I think on either side, I just feel like that would just you'd be like, why isn't there more? You know, it's like if your sex life is medium, it makes me think that you guys aren't talking.
Well, yeah, communication is definitely a factor. So then I question,
Or bad, excuse me.
is it sex or intimacy? Is it because there's no intimacy? So the intimacy component is also missing because the sex is bad. Because to me, there are people who can have great intimacy. They're touching, there's romance, there's all of that. But when it comes to penetration and what people would consider, I guess, good sex, their sex is meh. But as a woman, she's getting fulfilled. The man is bringing her flowers every week, and he's planning romantic dates, and he does all these things for a woman that makes a woman feel good. But I could take that and have mediocre sex, like very mediocre sex. Baths and giving me flowers every week and romance and date nights. I could actually do that and have very mediocre sex because he's feeding me in a way that I need to be fed. Because that will last over time. At some point, when your geriatrics kicks in and you might need to take a Viagra and sex dwindles down to once a week to once every other week to once a month to whenever you can get it out, you probably will continue the flowers and so forth, the things that were feeding my soul, because the sex is going to dwindle. So, though I don't think having bad sex is a good thing, I think that there's ways to balance having mediocre and not so fulfilling sex. So, I think intimacy could be a relationship saver and maybe not sex.
Don't they kind of go hand in hand though?
No, I don't think they go hand in hand. And that's the thing. I think men think, oh, okay, well, I'm giving you intimacy and sex. Some men are just giving sex. There is no intimacy. There is no hand holding. There's no whispering in the ears. There's no flowers. There's no running a bath for me. There's no massaging me at night and doing those things. To me, touching is intimate. All of those different things are intimate. They're not. That's sex.
Yeah, but
That's
I don't
sex.
think intimacy is action necessarily. I think intimacy is a mood. And I probably think most guys would agree. I think intimacy is like conversation, as far as how inside and out do you guys know each other? Do you talk? How much observation is there? think that's kind of what I think of tends toward intimacy, but it's very enlightening to hear it and put it in that way because, yeah, I think most guys would tend to, I don't know, that was just something I'm gonna
And
on.
I think most women would look at intimacy as a verb. It's an action. It's because to touch me is an action. Touch, feel, all of that stuff is
at the
action.
same time. A touch can be the opposite of intimacy. You know, to me, like I think again, just speaking from guys, when women scream, like it's like the emotional side of things. It's the I tell you things that I don't tell anybody else.
Yeah, I can get that.
I think that's how guys look at intimacy. Touching and gestures and actions or behaviors that I just it's interesting. Like
I'm gonna take it just for our sake. I'm gonna take it to the dictionary and see what the dictionary defines it as, because I am curious. So intimacy. Can be a private, cozy atmosphere, an intimate act, especially sexual intercourse. It can also be close familiarity or friendship closeness. What is intimacy to a woman? Women feel intimacy and closeness when they talk, touch, and share their thoughts and feelings with a loved one. They're usually more interested in intimacy than in sex. Sex of in itself. A feeling of intimate closeness takes time to develop. Therefore, women want to take their time with a relationship. 4 types of intimacy. There is emotional intimacy, mental intimacy, spiritual intimacy, and physical intimacy.
Yeah, that was a lot more than we were thinking, and it didn't really shed light on it one way or the other. Again, it's intimacy comes in various forms.
Correct.
Apparently.
But that's where the communication component comes in, right? Again, that's why communication is a key to the basis of any relationship. Is what do you define intimacy as? If it's for you, it's sharing your deep, dark secrets to me, things that you would never tell anybody else. That's your level of intimacy. If it's mine is touch, and if mine is again touching. When you're massaging me at night, you're touching me. When you are, you know what I'm saying? And then the actions that go with it. If you're bringing me flowers, if you're planning date nights, if it's all that, because that also comes back to being intimate and close. All of those things bring back closeness, right? It's an act of being close. You're not going to do that with someone you're not close with. You're not going to bring your coworker flowers every Friday. At least you shouldn't, right? But bringing your partner, your wife, your fiance, whomever, that is it. So I think, yeah, sex can be a relationship saver, but it also is communicating with someone in terms of sex is it just a physical act, or is it everything that goes up to it? The foreplay in sex.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're talking about sex being a relationship saver, it's more in the veins of the relationship needs saving. That's kind of looking at it like things are rocky or you feel a rough patch, or maybe even the sex, like you were saying, it has become infrequent and it's just not going on as much. And maybe the relationship is valued, by both parties. Then I think they would maybe need to make like a conscientious effort to try and do more, try to ignite the sex side of things a bit more, to be more aware and more proactive in in being carving out sexual time for each other.
But here's my thing. If it gets to the point where it needs to be saved, it's too late. I don't think sex can fix a relationship. It can be a relationship saver. And you notice I didn't say fix. I said relationship saver. It should
Yeah,
be
at
at the
the
point where it
saved.
doesn't need to be fixed. Because there's a point where a relationship is no longer fixable. There's a point where a relationship cannot be saved. But I think it's coming and looking at, are you having sex to please yourself? So when we have sex, is it just for me because I want to get pleased? Or am I having sex with you and intimacy with you because I actually want to please you? I get joy out of doing something for you. It's so much that goes into it. But if it gets to the point where it needs to be fixed, if it's like we're sitting down and we're like, in the relationship needs to be fixed, I don't know if sex fixes it, but I think it can potentially save it.
Well, like that, if it's a point where, like, if there's a lot of discourse, I don't see how sex can be something that's even capable of being towards the top of the agenda, because there's a lot of discourse. There's a lot of, there's a lot of not being on the same wavelength. Again, it's a lot of things that can cause a relationship to be off kilter, and I think they usually revolve in some way, shape, or form around communication, because when there's a lack of communication, the things that are needing to be addressed are not being talked about, therefore they can't be addressed.
Well, it goes to Duke Nation's point. He's saying good sex will prolong a bad relationship, but it won't fix or repair issues at the end of the day.
Pretty much. Good sex is something that, I don't know, it's almost a completely separate, especially for men, a separate situation from what a good relationship is. Because I think with men, there's a certain level of just how we're wired, and that sex is, in that it's almost like they're compartmentalized, you know what I mean? So you have that, and that's evaluated as that, and then you have the relationship,
which is
and the
evaluated
relationship is
differently.
evaluated as the relationship. And yeah, guys will definitely let one bleed over into the other, but I do think they tend to look at them separately, where it's like the spaghetti and the waffle theory, whereas women, I think it's everything always touches, everything always intersects when you're dealing with women. So again, sex and the relationship are a lot more intertwined than with the male psychology, and that in and of itself makes it a little interesting, because again, the guy tends to look at this or that, and the female tends to look, everything is in the same bowl with each other.
Yeah, because I cannot say, and I'll speak for myself personally, I cannot say that I've ever prolonged a relationship because the sex was good. I've never ever done that. Sex for me, I enjoy it. I love it. You know that. Like, I love sex. But sex has never been a foundation for which I built a relationship. I actually have more emotional needs. I want you to feed me emotionally. I am the woman who wants to have the back rubs at night. I am the woman who wants roses every Friday. I am the woman who wants the physical touch. I am the woman who loves her bath run. Because I do so much for the men in my life. I'm that woman. I could do all of that and have sex once or twice a month if I'm being fed in that way. So sex for me, and I've had an interesting sex life in my day. And listen, some of the best sex were for some of the most toxic men. And I don't do toxicity. So I'm not going to stick around just because you're making me squirt all over the place. Like, that's just me, because I need to be fed differently, right? I want my life to go in a certain way. And I also want peace. Just like a man wants peace, I want peace in my life. And so therefore, if all I'm thinking about is that he's got a long hood and he can dick me down and that's enough, and there's chaos everywhere else, I'm not staying in that, because I don't want chaos. And a lot of the men who are doing that, they're bringing chaos in your life. Like a lot of the women who are, but they're doing this and then want to rip your clothes off, they're bringing chaos.
What's going on? Yeah, well, I would say in general, if you're leading with sex, like that's kind of your calling card is, sex god.
No.
You probably
not sex god, sex
are
god.
not great in relationships. You know what I mean? As far as that's one area of things, and that's just it's not the biggest component of what a relationship is. There's a lot of back and forth and give and take that goes on. Where, again, going back to kind of my initial, I think that if sex is like I would say leaning towards like if it's bad or it's unfulfilling for one or both, that's something that's going to be tough for the relationship to overcome. Where at the same time, you see it all the time, especially in on like reality television, couples that have like a lot of passion in their relationship, but it manifests in the form of arguing and fighting and just being at each other's throat all the time. Like that's that's hard to maintain too, because that just takes a lot of energy.
That's taken away
But I
from your
think some
face.
people are wired that that's how they identify with. Like if you won't do that with them, then they feel like you're not. Again, people have different ways of going about things, different psychologies, and it's just interesting. Like we were watching that, we watch a lot of different clips and things, and it's. I mean, I watched a video a couple of days ago of just a bunch of women saying they don't do relationships, they only do one night stands.
Oh no.
Yeah, facts.
So that first of all, men are doing one night stands, women are not doing one night stands, because the reality is if that man wanted to call them back to go out and lure them, that right man, the woman will say a lot of things these days to go viral. But the reality is if Jason Tatum was the man that you had the one night stand with, you would not be doing one night stand. You want Jason Tatum over and over and over again because you want the lifestyle that Jason Tatum can provide. It makes women sound a certain way as if they are in control and they're determining what ship they're on and everything. It sounds good. It's a good sound bite. But the reality is when you're asleep at night, no woman wants to be known as the one night stand queen.
I don't know, man. Like it's these women are just they're wired a little bit differently than traditional.
It makes them sound good in sound bites. But when they're at home, when all of that is stripped off and they're with their bestest of friend who they've had to watch get married and have a baby and actually have a life, all of that bravado goes away. No woman wants to be known. I'm sorry, I don't care how they see it, whether it's deep, they've done stuff, wants to be the woman who all she does is have one night stands with men. Because that's a lot of one night stands throughout your life. Let's say you lose your virginity at 60 and you die at 16 and you die at 70. 54 years of one night stands. No real relationship, no nothing.
I'm pretty sure in 54 years ain't gonna be full of it. I don't know. But no, as we
if you just said they said we don't do relationships, we do one night stand.
No,
exactly.
I'm just saying, like, how are you but again, as you get difficult, them hookups are gonna become more as you get older, them hookups become more difficult.
Exactly. And again, if you haven't established what it is to be like in a relationship, no one takes you seriously.
Yeah, I agree. I don't, but I think that there is definitely enough talk around the lines of, when it comes to certain types of dynamics and certain types of relationships, like women are saying, again, how many women have we heard say, if I have to do X, Y, or Z, I'll just rather be single and get me a cat or pet or whatever. And yes, I know we're saying they're just saying that, but they're also living that, and their tune may change in 20 years, but in the meantime, they still out here talking that trash.
You know what a lot of women who say that have? Kids still in the house. Kids who will tend to their needs. And a lot of them say having multiple kids. You don't say that much when you have one child, because that one child will get you. But when you've got a couple that they're a couple of years apart and you might be raising kids for 25 years, it sounds ideal because you have your kids around, but it's not reality. And there are a lot of women who are leading with sex, which is so interesting. They lead with the sex because they think that that's what the man wants. And sex, it's not a relationship saver, it's a relationship starter.
But guys don't really like starting relationships off of sex. Most men don't like that concept. Like, if you're gonna be casual with me, but don't be casual with me
with the
as a
hopes of getting into a
pretense
relationship.
of getting serious with me, because that feels like manipulation. I think that's how most guys look at that.
But that's often what it is. And then there's the opposite of that, because we're going to bring that up. There's the opposite of that now are the women who withhold sex with the hope of being in a relationship. So a lot of what I've been seeing on these dating shows are women who are now coming on who have, let's say, 3 kids, 2 baby daddies, who are going through spiritual journeys and are now saying that they're going to be celibate, and the next time they are going to have sex is either in a committed relationship or when they're married. So they're now withholding sex because they think it's going to get them into a relationship, a more committed relationship. But my question to you is, as a man, would withholding sex not keep them single? Especially when you have had sex and you produce children, the liabilities who are right there to show that you've definitely had sex.
Yeah, most men ain't really gonna go for that, and it's gonna be pushed off as like, oh, you just trying to hit it and quit it, blah 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 blah. No, and it's mostly you just don't sound like a sane person. Like, I think you forego celibacy when you become a mother. Like, as far as you can be celibate all you want, but to think a man is going to pursue you in the midst of that, or that you're going to say, oh, I'm not having sex again until I'm married, like, I don't think there's a lot of guys that are going to sign up for that, because not if they got any good sense, because why should the barrier for entry be higher now that you have 1 or 2 children and 1 or 2 baby daddies? Why should it cost more now than it did then when it was younger and newer?
Let's remove the children. Let's
take the children out of it.
Take the children out of it.
Though. It's like,
does it work if a woman is single and no kids?
And she decides she's going to be celibate?
And she says that she wants to be celibate.
Well, yeah,
she's not a virgin.
No.
She's had sex before.
Her celibacy
she's on a celibacy journey.
Is legitimate, because there's no evidence saying, like, again, a man doesn't have to accept, it's not a package deal.
Yes, correct, because there's no kids.
It's not a package deal. So, yes, she can. Okay, so, like, the game starts at 1. At 1:15, the ticket is still good, but it's just not worth as much.
Correct.
You see what
I'm not paying the scale for as much at 1:15. Right.
So, again, while you might not be a virgin, you think of places like Saudi Arabia, you can't repackage a virgin.
Facts.
They're like, no. Pakistan, places in that part of the world where a virgin really is a commodity.
Yeah.
No. They be checking. They got
doctors.
Yeah,
they do check.
They be checking.
They check if the hymen's been broken.
But I think that a young lady who has not had children and decides, you know what, maybe this is not the approach that I wanted to be taking or whatever, I'm going to reserve myself for my husband. I think that's legitimate, because there's nothing that you can throw in her face that says the opposite of it. Because, again, what's the highest title a woman can give a man?
It's to be a father.
Exactly. So when you've given out that title already, it's difficult to say, oh, well, you got to do all of this stuff if you want to be the king.
So this is the barrier to entry.
This guy the king, and
look at that, you just have a baby.
Yeah, guys don't like that.
Well, thank you to the CHOP team for joining. So they're saying just the Sims will play that game. I know, just God. Just the Sims will play that game in terms of withholding sex for women who already have kids. And then he said, no kids, I'll play that game. I can understand that. I could even understand as a man, well, yes, if there is no children, there is no, as I like to call them, little liabilities running around, you're going to play that game, because to me, if you want to go on your spiritual journey, go on your spiritual journey. Take the time. Take the 6 months, the 1 year, the however long it is that you are taking to make sure that, again, you are getting the right partner. I just don't think it's fair to turn around to a man when you've got evidence that you've given, as Rob likes to say, other men the highest title, to then turn around and say the barrier to entry is now that if you want to have sex with me, you got to marry me, or you got to at least commit to me in a relationship. I think most men are going to say no. Like, and I don't know if it's a Sims game, because again, I'm very uncomfortable with that word simp, but I think it is a game. Yeah, let's be clear, she's playing that game alone. It does sound like a game to guys. Now you're running game on me, telling me how I'm going to proceed and how I'm going to pursue you. Is that what it sounds like? So you're running the playbook for me, telling me this is the play you're gonna run.
Pretty much. It's again, it's the same as in the conditions of like, oh, if you if you cheat on me, I'm leaving you and taking the baby and all of those things. Like, men, when they hear those type of attitudes, it's basically like saying, get on my program or else. And I think most guys that would be considered stand up, they're uncomfortable with being in a relationship where the woman gets to put her foot down and he has to respond to that. That's not a good place to be living as a guy, I don't think.
So what is your advice to those women? Because again, watching these shows, because Rob and I consume a lot of content because I want to know what's going on out there in the rest of the world. Because sometimes I feel like I live in this make believe world that doesn't exist, right? And so when I watch some of this content, I'm like, really, this is what's going on in the streets? Anywho, what would be your advice to women who are going on this spiritual journey because they have found that their past mistakes and they don't want to make other mistakes if they were looking for a relationship, if they decided to be celibate
and have kids
or abstinent? Yes, they're abstaining from sex or being celibate, which are two different things. Abstaining or being celibate, and they have kids.
I don't really have any advice other than good luck. I can pretty much. It's like having a fishing net with a hole in it. You might catch a fish, but it ain't gonna be a good one.
Did you just say a fishing net with a hole?
You know what I'm saying though? Like, if you catch a fish with a fishing net with a hole, it was just like the worst fish in the lake. Like, it just basically got caught and couldn't move. And like, yeah, that tactic is. That's not gonna catch you a top choice, top flight guy. It's not, because any guy with any sense, as soon as you start to lay down that doctrine, he's like, yeah, check please. If you even were able to get a date with that type of dude, because again, and people always just acting like it's okay. You know why men have such a big issue with other men's children?
Go ahead.
Other men.
Yeah, I can get that.
It has nothing to do with the kids.
No, of course the kids have nothing to do with it. As a stepmother, it's got nothing to do with it.
It's not to try to be mean to them. It's not to try to demean them. It's I don't know what kind of idiot your dad is, you know what I mean? Or a good person or whatever. I remember when, like in my 20s, my rule of thumb when dealing with women with kids was kind of like either he's in the child's life or he isn't. But the like in and out and every couple of months pop up and take her to the park for the day and then don't see him for 3 more months, like that was a situation I was unwilling to be dealing with, because you're kind of left to pick up the pieces in the interim there.
For the children or for the lady? Okay.
For the child, So again, if he's an active father, then I think most men don't really gotta like. How can you have an attitude with a man about trying to see his child?
You shouldn't.
Like, that's another thing about dealing with women with children is like if you accepting, it's a package deal. And men understand it well enough to know it's not just you and that kid.
It's the
that
man.
Kid's father too.
It's the.
And when you come in with 3 and 4 other dudes that are the fathers to them children, most guys are like, I don't want to deal with that many other dudes
I can
to be
understand that.
trying to deal with you.
I can understand that. And that's why you need to make better choices. And to me, here's the thing, from the other side, from a woman's perspective, your kids are just a reminder of your past before me. I'm simplifying it. It's just a reminder of your past before me. And therefore, every time you look at somebody's child, it's a reminder of the past, good, better, and different, that you have to deal with. And either way, I don't think, this is why we talk about, again, getting back to sex. If you're going to be in a situation, I don't think people without kids should date people with kids. So I am very much on that, and sex is not going to make it any better. Just because she's got some bomb kitty cat does not negate the fact that, again, you have to deal with another man, or for women, you have to deal with another woman in your man's life that is attached to them forever. So although I think sex can save a relationship, we don't think it should be a basis of a relationship, nor do I think it should be the relationship starter.
Nah, and then I think about, especially when it is like dudes dealing with women with children, say you have, because again, men with children probably should deal with women with children. But the energy of that is like maybe a better indicator of a successful future relationship is how that relationship with that child's father is being handled currently. I would think that the woman who has an amicable co-parenting relationship with her father, whether that child is young or older, is probably better equipped to have a successful relationship in the future than the one who's always talking about, oh, he's toxic and he's always doing, and like, because again, that it really does take two to play that toxic game. One person can't be toxic by themselves, because if you leave them alone, they're toxic by themselves. It takes two to play that game, and it takes different people, different levels of time to come out of it. Some people never come out of it. But when I hear that, oh, every dude is toxic, or oh, every woman is toxic, it's like you got some of that with you too, because that's why you keep finding yourself in that type of situation. You know what I'm saying? You just cannot do that on your own. So, for again, as a guy, to this woman, if you're talking about, oh, you got two kids, two different fathers, they both gang bang. Nah, man, that cannot be a good indicator. You know what I mean? That she's probably gonna, you're probably gonna have some of the same problems in a relationship with her as them other dudes. And I think that's where, as black men especially, I know it's tough because we just are so adversarial with each other again. But man, when you are dealing with a woman with kids, maybe it would make sense to talk to her kid's father.
It
does.
Know
what I mean? Like,
I think you should.
Bro, what was you dealing with? Like, why didn't y'all work out? Why did y'all leave? It's because, again, it's always, oh, he was a cheater. Oh, he was a cheater. He was toxic. It's asking. That's why Kevin Samuels used to ask the question, what happened in your relation? Why did your last relationship fail without
blaming the other person?
Because it takes two people to achieve that type of failure. One person can't do it alone.
And so adding sex on top of a toxic relationship, I've never understood that, right? Because there's certain things that should not be safe. So yes, for those who just joined, I think sex can save your relationship. I don't think it can fix an already broken relationship. Right. And if a relationship is toxic, adding sex on top of that doesn't help. Okay. So this is why I don't understand where it's like the toxic word comes up and people have had kids with toxic people. You didn't realize the person was toxic before you spent 10 months being pregnant? And now you have to deal with toxicity for the rest of your life? Like, someone was saying something about the Chloe and Tristan news. They were like, oh, so she's decided to deal with him and prolong this 18 years. You don't only deal with the parent for 18 years, you deal with them for the rest of your life. There's weddings, there's grandbabies, there's graduations, there's sicknesses, there's all of these things that happen in your children's life. I didn't stop dealing with my daughter's father when she turned 18. She's 20. She's going to be 21 in September. I'm dealing with the man for the rest of her life. When she decides to get married, we're all sitting down at a table and talking about that. So it's not 18, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm done. I don't have to deal with you anymore. It is for the rest of your life. And so you decided that somebody was toxic. Let's throw some sex in it and then add a couple babies and want to deal with toxicity for the rest of your life. So I think these toxic words that people want to use, because there is toxic sex. There's a lot of people adding sex to toxic shit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to actually give you some insight on a 30-day challenge that I decided to do with Robert. And I wanted, this is kind of the first time we're having this conversation in terms of your feelings about the 30-day challenge. And now that the 30-day challenge is over, if it's helped us grow closer, I want to get your thoughts. We've never had this conversation before. The 30-day challenge just ended on the 11th. And so we're going to talk about this. So you're going to get a raw, unadulterated conversation about this. So what was my 30-day challenge? Rob had gone away on a business trip. This was actually the first time we had been apart for, I think it was like 5 nights. He left on a Sunday night. He did not come back until the Friday afternoon. And so while he was away, again, the longest time we have been apart since I got here in February of 2021. While he was away, I was like, oh my God, I miss him. As annoying as he is, I miss being with this man. So I said to him, I said, you know what, when you come back, I'm going to do a 30-day challenge. And the 30-day challenge was all about him. And that's the part that I think was important. I didn't propose the 30-day challenge where we were going to have sex for 30 days straight. And as a woman, that's impossible. I have a menstrual, so not going to happen. What I said was that I was going to do a fellatio challenge, for lack of Instagram shutting us down, for 30 days. Now, of those 30 days, I was successful 26 of them. So 26 out of 30 days. And I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. So of the 30-day fellatio challenge that I gave to Rob that I was due, I was successful in 26. One, we were just dead tired and I could not wake him. He was gone to earth. And 3, I was mad at him because we had a show and then he said he wasn't even sure that he loved me. And so I was pissed at him for 3 days. And I said, I'm not sucking your dick, because I said I wasn't going to on the show. And I did for 3 days. Now, 26 days, batting about 80%. Is that 80%, 90%, whatever that is? Now that we're done the challenge, what was your feelings about? And it's not that our relationship needed to be saved, but it was nice. It was nice because I missed him so much. It was nice to do it for him. So now that it's done, what were your thoughts about it?
I definitely appreciated the energy and the effort. That was something that, at least from my side of things, I felt helped in the vein of that. Like, especially, you've been together for a while, and I think one of the most difficult things for women in relationships sometimes is getting so comfortable with your man that you just feel like, it's just regular schmegular, like with him is regular schmegular. I get to him when I get around to it, and things along those lines. So it kind of put maybe in the headspace of more, earlier in the relationship when the dynamic was a little bit more, because again, there's a newness, there's an attraction of the newness, that things are more intense and frequent, and it just kind of put me in that headspace of kind of even something to look forward to at the end of the night. You know what I mean? So it was definitely appreciated, definitely welcome, and like I said, a lot of times we wind up in conversation afterwards of just whatever, not really having nothing to do with nothing.
And we had created a routine. Like, it wasn't that I was just doing it. It was that I would go to the bathroom, I would get his rag, I would make it warm, like I would run it under the warm water, I would squeeze it out, I would come in. You know what I'm saying? He was already either in position or I would get him in position. I would wipe it down. It was a whole routine. It became a nightly routine. And it was nice because, again, that was also intimacy for me, right? It was the touching of you. It was all of that. It wasn't just the act itself for me. It was everything that went with the act. of it, because it wasn't just okay, great, Robert, and then I was at it. There was a routine that he got used to. To be like, babe, are you coming to bed? Are you almost done working? Are you coming to bed? Which I enjoy. And you're right. We would talk about it after, right? We would talk about it every night. I tried to add something new and different, and it didn't always lead to sex, but that was not the intent of the challenge. I would say of the 26 days, it led to sex. I don't know. I can't count. I would say maybe a quarter of the times. I don't think it wasn't like a whole bunch. It wasn't all 26 days. It wasn't like that. And that wasn't the intent. And it wasn't like, hey, let me do this for you. And then I was like, oh, and I'm ready right now, right? Like it wasn't any of that. It was, I'm really doing this for you. And I like what the CHOP team says. He said the excitement is key. Was it like that for you?
Like it's something to look forward to. Exactly. I found myself being a bit more reasonable on trying to get to bed at a certain time, and trying to go to bed at around the same time. Like a lot of times, you'd be up later than me, and I'd probably fall asleep, and unless I'm just drop tired, she'd wake me up, and we'd go through our spiel, and like I said, talk for a little bit afterwards, and then go ahead and go to sleep together. And I think that, yeah, like in relationships, especially as they mature, spontaneity, I think a lot of times you yearn for the spontaneity, and so like that's not really something I don't think she super has to worry with me about, like spontaneity, as far as I can be fairly random with just my moods and things like that, you know what I mean? But I think on the flip of that, scheduling, like just saying, hey, I'm going to reserve this time to show the person that I care about affection in this way, that way, to the third way, I think that's probably very underrated. I think in most people's minds, they don't want to be like, oh, Tuesday is sex night. But I think, again, when you get busy and as the relationship matures, if you're not paying attention, you can go a couple of Tuesdays and ain't nothing happened.
That's true.
And you probably would be like, yeah, maybe we should have made Tuesday sex night, and at least we'd be getting to each other once a week. Because I think, yeah, that's probably one of the most critical ways that relationships fail is all of the duties and responsibilities outside the relationship get prioritized over
the
those
relationship.
inside of the relationship. And that's not good for a relationship.
And it's funny, I never thought about it that way. I never thought about it that you would think that I've reserved this time for you. And that's what I did. I reserved that time for you. Everything that went with it, I reserved for him, right? Like, and I think that's important. Like, I'm very big on making him feel appreciated and wanted and desired and all of those different things. I say all the time, Rob is spoiled. Like, I lotion the bottom of his feet and put socks on because I'm trying to make sure his calluses, and I buy special lotion. I put his foot in baggies. Like, I do all of that because I think I want him to feel appreciated. And I never even really thought about it. It was something where it was like, you knew that this time was for you.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do anything else. I wasn't going to focus on anything else. I was going to focus on pleasuring you.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see it as a duty. And that's the thing, right? Like, I don't think anybody wants to feel like sex becomes a duty. Like,
I mean, you volunteered it, so it wasn't like on day 13, I was like, what's going on with this? You said you was going to, blah, 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 blah. Like, it wasn't nothing that I was going to hold you to, like, oh, you're full of shit, you said this. No, it was like, I appreciated just the idea of it, but, it was something that she made it a point of, like, this is like something I'm really committing to. And again, you see that. There again, in these day and ages, like again, Toshiba loves to say she does a lot, and she does a tremendous lot. She does a lot.
You can do a lot.
I know I do a lot. The type of money I run through in a month, believe me, I do a lot. And again, you can discount that, or you can say that doesn't matter, but not to the man, it doesn't. That's just the facts of it. Guys look at a big, there's times where I go through not being comfortable to make sure that you guys are comfortable. And because I'm not going to pull out a flag and say, hey, look at me, I'm doing this or anything like that. I think sometimes it kind of goes under the radar. So, and when it comes as, you just said, hey, I wanted to, and again, it started from you saying, just being gone, I missed you while you were gone. I missed you too while I was gone. And it also didn't help that I was feeling under the weather. And I'm like, I'm glad I'm not there to get them sick. But on the flip side of that, it feels like, if you were here, you'd be, if nothing, it'd almost be like the opposite of how I feel now, where it's like, I'm just trying to lay in this bed and die. I'd be having to constantly answer how you're doing. Are you okay? Do you need anything? And again,
you poor soul.
fellas, I know, because that's what I call one of those good problems. Like that's the way women love. Patrice O'Neill used to have a joke about it. It's like women care about their man's health. Men don't give a damn about their woman's health. Like he has he ever asked you like a question about your health or anything like that? We don't care about
That's
our
a good
own.
question. You've never asked me.
We don't care about our own. But the way women love is different. So you have that different level of interest, investment, like.
Yeah, Rob sneezes and I'm like,
yeah, and like, okay, if I hit my head on something, she's like,
oh my God, you might have a concussion, dude.
I'm like, but again, it's one of those good problems. I'd rather be rolling my eyes at someone overreacting to a situation than be sitting there crossing the finish line and like, damn, ain't nobody here, like that's. And I think there's a lot of guys in this world that are feeling that way, and there's a lot of women feeling the same way too. Again, we talk all the time that not relationship goals, only so traditional to the point of just gender roles, but that's really what works for us. You know what I mean? And I think everyone has to find that for themselves, because I truly feel like, no, man, like you said earlier, like that's all BS, whether it's male or female. No one wants to be alone. Life is not designed to be experienced from start to end on a path by yourself. The entire experience is predicated on meeting good people and being exposed to better aspects of life. That is the entire point of this.
But think about it. Do you really want to be the person who's in the newspaper and there's a story about the fact that your landlord had to open your door because your body started to smell after 2 weeks because blah blah blah, and no one had called? Like that's what happens. People who go around and don't prioritize relationships with other people, that's a possibility of happening. And is that what you want? I don't think it sounds great when you're in your 20s, 30s, even in your 40s. Now I'm good, I'm bad all by myself, and all of those terms. It sounds great. But when you're 50, 60, 70, and if God forbid you make it to 80 or 90, do you really want to be that person that you are some byline in a story about the fact that your body was discovered because it started smelling and your neighbors called the apartment manager? That's what loneliness becomes. That's what choosing to not cohabitate and be with somebody and intertwine your life with someone else is. But also, you can't base that just on sex.
No, definitely not just on sex. And I think that we live in such a world where things are so easily replaceable, where nowadays I don't think most people give thought to how valuable it is to have relationships succeed over a long period of time, because those are kind of the barometers sometimes of whether you're, of what you really got going on with yourself. I am becoming more successful in my career, but my career is changing in an upward trajectory. I would think most people that have known me, and again, I have friends for 30 and like I have very long-term friends, and most of them will say he's still pretty much the same guy that I remember from 30 years ago or whatever. And I think that's kind of the point of it. And we live in a world now where everything is so temporary and people are so easily replaced, where I'm sure there's a lot of people out there where it's like their most tenured friendship is 3 or 4 years,
Which is crazy to me.
which is crazy because you don't get that experience of you've seen me come from here to here to here. You don't look if your oldest friend is 3 or 4 years old, you really don't have anybody in your life that can tell you nothing, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
They don't. They've only known you basic. Like I can't imagine in 3 to 4 years. Best case scenario, they might have seen you in 2 different seasons. You know, but they have not really seen you go through periods of your life and see how a person's character really is. Like I said with you, that was something that I looked at. Most women don't have long-term friends groups, don't have long-term friends. Even one, they might have one. And it's usually like they just remain in communication. It's not really like a closeness or nothing like that. It's just they stay in touch, you know. And
And my friends were on him. Like when I was moving, well, the one friend he's met in person was my best friend from Jamaica when I was like 4 and 5 years old. You met her when we were in New York, Anika. And again, we don't stay in touch as much, but whenever we're around each other, it is what it is. We've known each other since we were 5. But when I was moving, we had a Zoom call, and it was my best friend group, me and Rob. And Rob was on it, and they were asking him all kinds of questions because they wanted to make sure that I was good. They all have his phone number, they can get in touch with him. And I didn't realize how much that mattered to him, that he was like, she has people that love her and care.
well, if you can't maintain friendships, you can't maintain relationships. Like that's I don't see how you can do one without being able to do the other.
No, I agree with you. Right? And so it's interesting. I would want to know what your thoughts are. Would you give advice to, interesting. So Sorlin Sage says, do you think so? I have so many friends who have circles that run decades deep.
No, that's good, but I think they're more outliers than they are the norm. And again, we're from a different generation. We're a little bit older too. You look at most of these young people, and you get into this younger generation, and those ties don't run as deep because when someone does something, when someone commits a violation and your instinct is to just block and delete, you're not going to have an extended period of friendship usually. Like I said, you might usually be able to pull one person through that type of situation, but just the way that life is, it's just so volatile. With even with friends are going to get into it on occasion over certain
And it
things.
happens, absolutely.
If you actually give a damn about the other person, you know what I mean? Because I come from again a different period of where it's like
The microwave generation. I like that term.
if I'm your friend and I see you walking towards a pitfall, why would I just be quiet? Or why would I let you just walk towards that? Or be like, oh, well, I just felt like he needed to experience that for himself. No, if I was a friend, I would speak to that. And if you might not like that, that's fine, and if you
Get
decide
mad
you
or
don't want to
whatever,
be
yeah.
friends anymore based on that, then that's on you. That's not on me, you know. But I think the world we live in now, it's just so agreeable and so like, a person puts on an ugly sweater and asks how they look, and people are like, oh, you look good. I like that fit. No, like the being confrontational is not always a bad thing.
Well, Sorrel and Sage is giving thank you to our sponsor who's joined us. She's saying, I have to say that everyone needs a Rob in their life to give them straight goods because you pull no punches, sir, and your truths are often hilariously brutal. Welcome to my
Thank
world,
you, thank
everybody.
you.
That's why we have a show called Fuck Your Feelings, because this is how this man runs this relationship.
Yes, and it's a beautiful relationship.
And it is a beautiful relationship. And let's get back to the sex thing. Let me ask you this now.
Okay.
Do you feel as if people are more committed to sex versus saving a relationship? Again, the commitment to the commitment of the relationship, are they more committed to sex in a relationship? Because being committed to the commitment takes hard work. Sex is easy.
I
I know it's a kind of a
Yeah, I don't think neither. I don't think people are committed to sex or relationships because you can replace either, especially, and I hate to make it seem like I'm speaking on ladies' business, but especially women because it takes zero skill to go bag a new dude. You know, you basically can just go out there and make yourself look available, and some guy is gonna pull up and be like, "What's going on?"
Well, our sponsor has a good question. How good is the sex? We'll call it mediocre. However, I'm going to add from the female perspective, but the intimacy is top notch. So you've got really great intimacy. And for those who are just joining us, Rob and I kind of had a debate in terms of what intimacy is. I'm saying that for some women, intimacy is a verb, it's actions. Where Rob is like, it's more of a situation where a man is sharing his innermost thoughts and you're in his closest of circle, right? But for a lot of women, it's touch, it's feel, it's all of those, it's the massages at night, it's all of those different things. It could be flowers every Friday, the date nights, the holding hand in the car, the looks across the table, the pulling you in close. Those things for women are intimacy. So the intimacy is top notch, but the sex is mid range. But here's the thing, because for me, it's like I think it's also the older I have gotten. I'm in my 40s now. Sex is not a priority in terms of number one, two, or even three. Why? Because I know eventually it's going to fade. Right? Like it's going to fade. You're not going to want to have sex with me, 3-4 times a night, 3-4 times a week. It might start going to 3-4 times a month. But if that's the basis of what we have, I'm not committed to the commitment. If it was just about sex, I want to make sure that we have other stuff. So on stage is also piping again. She says, been there, mediocre sex and great intimacy to a point. There was a limit to how deep the relationship was ever going to go. And Duke Nation is saying sex is very easy. However, it really depends on what stage you are in your life. And that's fact. Duke Nation is also saying if you're dating for a purpose, then you will most likely try to focus on the relationship more than the sex. And Uncle Overstand is saying mediocre sex is a path to destruction.
He's kind of saying like, look, again, I think those things, like, who doesn't want to be better at sex? So any person that has a reluctance to experiment or expand like I said, so much of sex stuff can be overcome, again, with just communication, let him, no, you bring up a threesome conversation.
The woman.
Yes, the woman, and see how his ears pin up, and he's like, "Oh, for real? We're doing this?"
Just the idea.
Of it will get him into a different space because most women feel threatened in engaging their guy in that kind of way. I don't want his eyes front center, buddy. Like I don't want his eyes or attention on any other woman other than me. And I think that's just. Yeah, that's kind of an easier way to lose because when it's like the focus was just on getting him
and not keeping him.
Yeah, and I think we get to focus on getting you because once we've got you, we've got you. Hence the whole conversation we were having about baby daddies and stuff like that. It's like once you let a guy get you like that, he
got you for life.
He got you. He's like, oh. How's Toshiba do? Oh, my baby mama, like, yeah, you are like, he's got you. You know what I mean? But
hold on, there's an interesting conversation happening here, and I need to clarify this for the people. The Sterling Sage is actually asking a really good question.
That's not a threesome.
Give me a second, let me answer. Threesome: 2 women and 1 man, or 2 men and 1 woman. Let me be clear. The true definition of a threesome requires all 3 parties to be intimate. So, if you bring another woman into your bedroom and your man only has sex with her and then has sex with you, but the two women never interact, that is not a threesome. If you bring another man into your relationship and both men have sex with you but don't interact, that is not a threesome. That is called something completely different. A threesome are three separate people who are going to interact with each other. And that's why a woman with two men, unless the men are bisexual, have never had a threesome. It cannot be a threesome unless the men are interacting with each other. That's a train, laugh out loud, right?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the key that people need to be talking about. And this is why I think it becomes interesting for women to have the conversation, right? It's because they're looking at it from the perspective of what does it mean for my relationship that I am bringing another woman in, and number two, that I potentially have to interact with her.
Here she goes. I'm down with the Bible.
Good night.
Lord
Good
mercy.
night.
We'll
Good
move
night.
on
Good
past
night.
that comment. We've discussed this already, ma'am.
And she's in a very small percentage
I
of
heard
women who
one
are okay
on
with
Fresh
that.
and Fit, and she was very, very like adamant about the situation. But it was funny because they even
Adamant in what way?
She said she was just like, I like my guys. I think that's hot. And but even they hit her where she eventually
Relented.
She was like, well, he would have to be a top though. And I'm like,
but there has to be
potato to me. But
also the men that she's with would have to be a top, and then the men they bring in would have to be the bottom.
Wow.
Because there has to be a top and a bottom.
Confused. I think she was just saying with the man that she was dealing with on a more
serious level, he would have to be the top.
He would have to be, because she couldn't see herself respecting the guy who
if he was the bottom.
And I'm just like, that's
problematic within itself. So don't. And it is fairly common. I think most women would agree.
It is like I think you're just playing with a lot of fire right there, because like the old boy delivered. Most
Delivered has a girlfriend. I gotta show you his post today. He posted his girlfriend with a kissy face.
No, he just yesterday talking about where your baby mama at. Like, no, Delivered is capping a lot. Delivered is putting on a lot of energy into his persona of, look, man.
Yes, spicy Uncle Andrew Sorlin says. Andrew Caldwell, if you guys don't know, he literally had a whole thing when he was like, I'm delivered. I don't like that. You want us to play it?
We're going to use this guy as an example.
He said, I don't like men no more.
This guy here, man. I never seen this clip until the other day. We did this on a different show.
I think it was clip 5.
Like, yo, man.
No,
this is crazy right here.
It's clip, hold on, it's clip 4. Okay, so this is something I did not know. Rob did not know about this clip. I thought everybody knew about this clip, but this gentleman is basically describing his new sexual identity.
No, I don't want to see that one.
Right now.
Okay, yeah.
What did you come here for? What did you come down here for? Tell me. To get delivered more. Get delivered. Do you believe that the Lord tonight has set you free? Yes, sir. Turn around and tell those people.
What set you free from?
I'm not gay no more. I am delivered. I don't like men no more. I said I like women. Women. I said women. I'm not gay. I would not date a man. I would not hair a purse. I would not put on makeup. I will love a woman.
Okay, so the reason we played that clip is like this brother will date women. He'll do all of that. But trust me, ladies, you will never, ever get his juices flowing like them men in them purses and that makeup did. That's no point. There's not a lot of men who deal with other men who select a woman to be with long term. So, you see what women don't want him. Yeah, man.
Apparently, Andrew got him a girlfriend now. He posted it today on Beyonce's internet for the people to see with that kissy face.
Woman,
And that's what he said.
Yeah, that
He
was
said, woman.
no, he was saying that's when he was like take the boobs and he go, yeah, he is full fledged. You ready to take me to the strip club?
So
Sir.
think about it. 2 men like that and a woman. Is that truly even a threesome? Because the men want to be with each other. Think about
He
it.
seems like an odd person out.
Yes, she becomes the odd person out as the person who's watched a lot of that type of.
Yeah.
She's the odd person
Yeah,
out.
this is a wild conversation here. It's a little bit more.
Oh, sorry. Listen, we got our sponsor
sorry,
came on
say-
and asked it, so we've got to talk about it. She becomes the odd person out. This is what, again, when you're like, sex is such a big topic, right?
Okay.
Like,
Because again, we're talking about by the definition of the threesome. I have to because I can't leave this point down a little bit. So in a it's 2 women and a guy.
okay.
The 2 women like each other. They're doing their thing, and the guy is sitting back just watching. And I can totally see that being like a cool situation for him. He's like, oh, this is wow. I'm just sitting back. He might have him a glass of cognac or something like that, and he is sitting there just taking in the vibe. 2 dudes and a woman. When did the 2 dudes start getting into it, and the woman is sitting on the sideline, like, how does she feel?
That would
Is
be an
she
interesting
really
question.
turned on? Is she really like aroused by this situation?
If she's into gay porn,
And
sure.
what happens if they forget about her?
Well, at that point, they've probably forgotten about her. She's no longer in the picture. It's like, this is why when you're asking for these things, you have to be very clear about let's define what that looks
That
like.
seems like that could backfire, and you're gonna come home one day and they are playing without you, and you're gonna be offended. I would say 80% of men, if he comes home and his woman is in bed with another woman, he's not gonna be mad. He's just kind of like, why did y'all call me? Or some type of energy like
I'll
that.
go with that.
But I think that woman coming home and
That's a whole different
her
scenario.
man is getting down with another dude, she's probably not very happy with that situation.
Not the thing. No, because here's the problem. It's based on that number one key communication. If you knew already that your man was into other men in that way and you accepted it, it's a different situation than if it's a complete surprise and you walking and that's what's going on. It's not a blow if you already know.
Okay.
What kind of communication are you having with
I
your
also
partner?
think that there's just knowing and seeing is.
I will
totally
agree to
different
that.
things. I think you might be in your head okay with the certain ideas, and then because that happens with guys, even with a woman with another woman. There's been some tender dudes out there where the threesome cost her the relationship. You know, where the dude was the one that had the feelings and felt insecure and inadequate.
I've had that
after
situation.
After the confetti hit the ground or whatever, So I think if you're not severely secure, A, personally, and B, in your relationship, like that is the wave, the deep end of the wave pool. You should not be playing around there if you don't really know how to swim good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because again, that's all a part of, can it save the relationship, right? Part of that is, do you introduce new things, new people, new scenarios, whatever is it going to do? Is the relationship strong enough? Exactly.
Because you're not guaranteed a good experience. The best of screening, the best of, you're doing your background checks, your credit card, you're running all of it. And, people can still get slipped through the radar, and you start dealing with this third party and they're toxic. Like, does it sink your boat, or do you make her walk or him or
I'm not even going to go that
Like,
far. I'm going to give you a scenario. You have introduced somebody new into the relationship because, again, sex can help to save a relationship, right? So this is going to be the last thing before the question. We introduce someone new into the relationship, another woman.
Mhm.
We are getting down. We're having the situation. You're hearing me make noises I have never made with you, and vice versa. I'm hearing you make noises with her that I have never heard you make with me. The whole situation's done. Nobody gets mad during the situation because you're enjoying it, right? And then you're done. When you have that conversation, because there's always a conversation that needs to be had after you've had an experience like that. How do you tackle the fact that, hey, babe, I heard you making some noises that I have never. Let's talk about that. I have had that situation with an ex where we were both, this girl, but I won't lie, she was fan freaking tastic. Like, and we had to have that difficult conversation after because they had struck up something in your partner that it didn't have. What's going on here?
I don't know. What happened? The last question threw me for a loop there.
Said, don't lose him to Melvin. Robert just saw one thing and his ADD kicked in. Did she bring a strap on? No. That was the thing. She did not. I guess that was a question for me. No, it was nothing like that. There was no other things happening. It was just she was really good at what she did. And we both were just very...
And I think that's a perfect example to illustrate what I was just speaking on is where you two got to be solid. Because if you making noises, I'm making noises, I would see us as coming back and having that conversation. No. Like, we need to bring her back and figure out what the hell she was doing. She got us both squirming and squealing up in here. That wouldn't be a threatening thing.
No.
You know what I'm saying? No. But then that's where I say, again, take that same thing, they're having a threesome to spice it up and save the relationship.
To fix the relationship.
And now, again, and that's how you wind up where, again, that's recipe for disaster in that type of situation because now he is looking for her and he done forgot all about you because your relationship is, again, this was like the last ditch hurrah. And yes. All it did was introduce him to another potential. And like I said, that's when it's something that was not a good situation, and y'all probably were better off just figuring out that the relationship was not good because now you're more traumatized because now it's almost like you introduced the demise of the relationship by quote unquote spicing it up, and that happens a lot of the times too.
Well, I want you to tackle something that Duke has said. And he's saying a male's ego is fragile, so that would be a problem for most men. What say you, Rob, on that?
I think with the caveat of most men, I would agree, most men's ego are fragile. A woman delivering an experience to your woman, I don't think that would be the same. I wouldn't quantify that the same as another dude delivering an experience to one woman, if you catch my drift. You know, it's yes, there's some guys because there's that I want to be your soul type of provider. Well, bro, if you have that type of energy, like, you know, in Middle Eastern type of energy, that like they're not even interested in any of that stuff. You know, if that's kind of your energy, I would say then that's not even something you would even want to entertain, you know, or even want to look at, you know.
It's interesting you say. Go ahead.
No, just because here's a dirty secret, guys. You can't compete with a woman.
That's what I was going to say.
I don't care how great you want to try to be. If your woman likes women, you cannot fulfill that need.
That's what I was clearly going to say. Thank you for reading my mind. So that's the last comment before we go on. That's the problem is when you try to compete, that you compare the two and you're trying to compete one for the other. There is no competition. There is absolutely none. So a woman being able to provide your woman an experience that you don't provide her all the time.
It sounds like duh to me. Like that's what she's supposed to do.
And she also understands the female body. So what she's doing is what she experiences, and she knows when she's telling her man to put it here, and she's lifting her torso a bit so he can get the right spot. All those things, she doesn't need to do that with the woman. The woman understands that. So no, there should be no fragile ego in that situation. The situation Rob has talked about, absolutely there should be fragile. Can I finish? The situation that Rob just talked about, if it was another man making her ooh and all, that's a whole different scenario. That's where the male ego comes in.
Totally.
But with another
Why would
woman,
you
no.
put
If you're
yourself in
interested,
that
thank you.
situation?
If you already feel as if by introducing another woman into the relationship that there might be issues, that is something that you should not introduce at all, because that's not going to save a relationship. It's literally going to break a relationship that probably should be broken.
Yeah, and just so break the relationship without all the extra trauma.
Fact.
And save that for innocent third person.
From all of the extra stuff that
yeah,
comes with that, because
involved.
they could get involved in a situation that they thought they were coming in to experience something new for themselves and have a good time and give you a good time, and now they're getting calls about you ruined my relationship.
Yeah,
No,
don't turn a person into
don't
a
do that.
Band-Aid. That's not good. All right. What was the best compliment you've ever received? I think that was meant for you.
It's meant for anybody who picks it, Robert. You get compliments all the time.
Yeah, I won't be thinking of them like that. I think one of my professors once told me that as great of an athlete as I was an even better thinker.
I remember you told me that.
And that was coming from someone who was pretty high caliber in their own right. And it kind of made me feel like, yeah, I have a decent head on my shoulders.
And you do.
Thank you.
It's pretty handsome head too. My question, in line with tonight's topic, is what's your favorite sex position?
Oh, okay.
Do you know what it is?
The one that I'm scared of the most.
And tell the people the one that you're scared of the most.
You have
My favorite sex position is being on top, and Robert does not like it. But tell them why you don't like it.
She don't know her own. It's like She-Hulk. You don't invite She-Hulk to climb on top of you.
I'm not She-Hulk. Stop it. You know what? I'm done with you for the night. I do work out 6 to 7 days a week, I must add, and I am a pretty strong woman. You know what it is? Is it because my thighs are so strong? I have very strong thighs.
It's funny. There's this show, The Orville, and it's like a comedy version of Star Trek.
Okay.
It's what's his name?
Okay, get to it.
It's the black dude, and she's from another species, but she's like the security officer on the ship, and I guess their planet has higher gravity, so she's like 5 times stronger than normal people. So they were going, during sex, she was like cracking bones of his, and they were kind of going through it.
Is that how you feel?
No, I'm not going that far. But there was this one scene towards the end where bro full of faces all bashed up and bleeded up, and I'm just kind of like, and they're sitting there laying like, I don't think this can keep going on, and he's like, yeah, I know, I like you so much.
Thank you for my supporters. Okay,
What?
Thank you, Sorlin. Sorgil says he thinks you're gonna break it, and he does.
He
And
does.
thank you, Sam. She's saying team. I'm so Jamaican. Team. How you say it? I'm Jamaican. I say team. Team Thunder Thighs. We in the club together.
Yes, thunder thighs are amazing until they come down on you off the top rope, and then it's just like.
Good night, Robert. Read your next question.
Okay. I love thunder thighs. Don't get it wrong, but I don't like Drago. Like I will break you. I'm having too much fun with that.
Read the question.
Does the thought of someone watching us have sex excite you?
Wow, all the sex questions were today.
That's kind of that is a very contextual question in my mind, the way it comes across. Being somewhere sexy and there's other sexy people around and it's trendy, yeah, that sounds like dope. Being in Europe on like a nude beach with a bunch of 80-year-olds,
Not so great.
does not sound sexy at all. So yeah, it would just like really depend on the context and the scenario, scene. The setting would matter tremendously.
So in the right setting, yes, but in the wrong setting, we ain't doing that.
Absolutely no. We're grabbing our towel and running off or something like that. Like what is happening? Where did these old people come from?
Well, Duke Nation is having a little bit of a laugh at your expense, and so on the stage, and Sam, Rob getting mashed up by a yachty. No surprise there. I'm just saying. Shout out to the yachty woman there. Brap, brap, brap.
brop, brop my ass, I'm not going to the ER because of sex. It's never gonna happen. So that means your boy gotta stay in control, because it's no, and I know this woman. I care about her deeply. I love her. That's why she does not have the power in this relationship. She would abuse it. I do not trust her. Sorry. If she's physically bigger than me, I don't know. I might be in danger for real. Those Roberts might be turning into smacks and stuff like that.
Listen, no, I won't lie. I'd be up here like.
Yeah, just forgot all about me. Forgot all about me. Yeah, and then and again, I don't care what you say. Any man, when this becomes this, you know, that sounds like a tragic situation.
I'm done with you. So again, staying on the topic of sex, I stir the question ball in you, Osaf. How do you define great sex? How do you define great sex? I think, to me, great sex is at the end of having sex when you still want to hold each other. To me, honestly, that's such a big thing. Like, that for us has always been our thing. It's when it's done, Rob holds me in and we hold each other, and it isn't like go your separate ways, right? It's not just the act itself, it's everything before and then after the act.
That's what it is. Sex is kind of like a palate cleanser. You know what I mean? Like when you're having a multi-course meal, sometimes they give you like a little sorbet or some ice cream or something like that. Because they say, cleanse your palate. Because I don't want you tasting what you were eating before
in this new meal.
Dish. Yeah. And that's kind of what sex is. Like afterwards, it's like the problems that you guys were nagging and arguing and fussing about, they should go away with that. Yes. And then it should be like, okay, and then tomorrow I'll do some other belligerent shit, and you'll be mad at me for that. But at least it's not the stuff from yesterday.
Correct.
So it kind of cleans the slate.
There's a whole conversation happening. People are loving the questions today.
Send it to the hospital.
Send it to the hospital.
I'm not going. I have fantastic benefits. I'm not.
Sorry to say, just facts. Duke Nation said someone play a Spice song, theme song for the show. Sam is saying yeehaw.
Oh, God.
Uncle Overstand says foot on his neck.
Oh, no.
He also says, nah, got a high five after. And then Duke is saying, if the sex is great, I'll feel for French toast. Okay, you get hungry.
Somebody want to jump up and cook.
Yeah, Rob's ready to go to sleep.
I'm going to sleep.
Your question.
Except in the morning time, then I'm like.
Yeah, when it's morning time, I get up and I cook French toast.
What's the best trip you've ever taken? I think this is a rehash of a question we've had, but I tend to that. I think most recently, we took an extended trip where over COVID, we were in New York. And that was a great trip. That was very early in our relationship, and we really, really got to know each other and stuff like that. I think just by myself, personally, what I would put in that category is probably my trip to India, even though it was a business trip, that kind of really blew my mind. It was something that was like, remember the girl that was talking about she couldn't poop in front of her boyfriend? Yeah. I was like, she need to take a trip to India and just pull their pants down and drop a deuce on the sidewalk and see how, that's very, India's a very different place, but it was very magical. I ain't gonna lie, because it's like 1,000-year-old ruins with cities, and they're just in nature and animals, and it's all just mashed up. You know, there's you don't got to go to no park. Like you can literally cross the street, and it's like a forest or something. Like that. My anxiety would be too high. It's just too much people for me. It's a lot going on. It's just a lot of people, and then I have a whole thing with like. It's just a lot, like personal space. So that last one we're gonna answer. We're both gonna answer because it's the last one in the book. So no, I don't know what it is. This is my last question. We're gonna answer this last one together. So, what's been your proudest moment so far? That's a good question. I think my proudest moment has been publishing. So personally, my proudest moment has been publishing my book, No Handouts for Black Girls.
And thank you. My editor is on, Dalio Joanne, our sponsor, Sorrel and Sage. That was one of my proudest moments because it came out of a lot of hurt and things that just happened in my career, and also being able to produce it during COVID and it being the 7th book I had published was really good. Overall in my life, I think that my proudest moment has been watching my daughter pursue her dreams on national television, and her team placing 3rd on Canada's Got Talent. That's been one of my proudest moments. Okay, so the question that we're going to answer both.
Oh yeah, how do you describe me to others?
Oh my God, that's actually a great question for us to have. So let's repeat the question. How do you describe me to other people? So how do you describe me to other people?
Ooh, excuse me. Sorry, it's getting late for me. I describe Sheba as my better half. Like really, like she is my half supervisor, my structurer, my scheduler, she handles a lot of things that if she didn't handle them, they just wouldn't get done. So I know how important she is to me, and I think we just complement each other in that way.
That's sweet. How I would describe Rob to other people, and Sorlin Stage is on, and I talk to her all the time about him. Rob is one of the smartest people I've ever met. I admire him. I mean, we also call him Beyonce. It also helps that he's so handsome. Right? Rob is the 666 that the women are saying that they want in men. But we've built so much together, and we've been on this kind of roller coaster ride of life together. And I look forward to doing this with him until the end. But you really are one of the smartest people that I know, and I think he's got a stick-to-itiveness about life that I wish I had earlier in life, but because of his stick-to-itiveness, that's actually how I know we're going to stay together. We're not staying together in this relationship because of me. We are staying together in this relationship because of Rob, because Rob has a stick-to-itiveness that it would be difficult for me to even leave. And it's not that he wouldn't let me. He would be like, yo, you want to go. But I just think his commitment to the commitment of our relationship from a male standpoint is so strong for me. Like, where else am I going to get all of this? They said, what did they say? There's pee or something in the dating pool?
Oh yeah, it's jacked up out there for sure. But I also think, again, I tend not to overreact. You tend to be a bit more hot about situations. I think we just complement each other really well.
We do.
And you definitely, just like I need my Roberts occasionally, you need your dirty looks and be quiet and stuff like that, from the perspective of like, I don't think anyone wants to be with someone who can bring correction to their life. Like if I'm just
I definitely need to get checked.
If I'm better in you than in every way, shape, or form of life, I'm kind of feeling like this ain't U-Haul. Like, what am I just carrying you
just
along?
Hitching.
Like, you don't add any value to the situation.
No, we do a really good job of balancing each other out. I need to be checked. I definitely know that, and he's the right man to check me. And I think he also understands that he can't navigate the world alone. He needs supervision, right? Like where I need to be checked, Rob needs supervision, and we do that for each other.
Yeah, there's certain behaviors that I just wouldn't even, like, again, and I have a 12-year-old daughter to remind me constantly, you're going to like get in trouble with there's certain things that I wouldn't even think of putting her through because I know she would not take well to it. And I think that's a good thing. A woman should have her boundaries. She doesn't get to put her foot down, but she does get to put her boundaries down. And it's up to you to respect them or not. And if you decide to disrespect them, then be prepared that there may be consequences that you don't like behind that. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of how I look at it. So she's never been like, so she knows I don't like ultimatums. I think they're pointless. Like if you're given an ultimatum, you ain't got no leverage. She's just very clear what she will accept and what she won't. And it's up to me on whether I'm going to adhere to that.
And then it's up to me of if he doesn't fit my standards, or if he crosses the boundary I've set in the relationship, I have to decide if I'm going to stay or go. Because again, if you stay and someone has clearly stepped over the line, stepped over the boundary, and you allow them to, can you blame them for everything that they do after, right?
Mhm.
You kept poking them. So, I mean, that's the balance in relationship. And we really, like I said, we're not trying to be couple goals, guys. We are just two people really working hard to stay together because, again, we got on this roller coaster ride together, and it's actually been a pretty good roller coaster ride, as Dahlia Joanne likes to remind me about my daily schedule. So, as usual, we want to thank everybody for joining us. Go ahead, babe.
No, sorry.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As usual, I want to thank our sponsor, Sorrel and Sage. Make sure that you are supporting them. They are on Instagram at Sorrel and Sage CA, and then go on their website, shopsorrelandsage.com. Like I said, they now have a product called Sheba, and next week we'll have actually a surprise for you coming directly from our sponsor, Sorrel and Sage. So look out for the Sorrel and Sage surprise next week. They're gonna be hooking us up so we can hook you up. So thank you, everybody. Robert, any last words?
No, thanks for stopping by, everybody that came in, especially those that participated and chimed in. And look forward to seeing you guys next Thursday. We might do a part 2 and just kind of accentuate just sexy talk stuff, because it gets people talking and chatting, and we talk about how dangerous this one is.
Next time, maybe I'm gonna try to yeehaw tonight. Okay, we'll never see.
All right, y'all have a
Good night, everybody.
Bye.